webinar today, and our webinar is on character education, and we're delighted to be joined by Dr. Tom Harrison from the University of Birmingham. And so I thought we'd kick off, and with Tom, do you want to introduce a little bit about yourself and the topic of today?
Yeah, so my name, thank you very much indeed, Vicky, and I'm delighted to be part of this online broadcast. My role, as I have a number of roles at the University of Birmingham, I'm actually the Director of Education for a large research centre here at the university, which is based within the School of Education, but actually works across lots of different disciplines, looking at the place of character in society. So the Jubilee Centre for Character and Virtues, where I am the Director of Education, that works with professionals, works in a lot of schools, works in the voluntary sector, and also works with families and parents. And it's really just asking big questions of, where does character and virtue contribute to individual and societal flourishing? So that's one role I have. I also run a master's in character education, where students study on a 3-year kind of online distance learning program on character education. But my final, I suppose, personal research is primarily around the influence of the internet on children and young people's character and virtues. And that's what I've been kindly asked to come and speak to you about today, some of my own research. I never give up an opportunity to come and tell people about my own research and the work that I'm actually doing, and it's fantastic to get this opportunity. And I'm looking forward to answering some questions about what we think are the implications for new digital technologies and media for the kind of the values and the virtues and the character qualities that young people grow up with today.
So in a nutshell then, because obviously character education can mean lots of different things depending on different countries, different contexts, how would you describe character education in kind of layman terms?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. There's a lot of what might be called a semantic minefield around the terms of character and character education. It means a lot of different things to different people. I've spent enough time in kind of university meetings, kind of having these big conceptual questions about, what is character? And I'm fairly pragmatic at heart. I think, that saying that when all is said and done, more is often said than done, I think is actually true in this area. And what we need to do is find a understanding of character that I think that we can all work with. And this is the one that I tend to propose. I suggest that it's the human qualities that may be called virtues or strengths or dispositions. You can get into language of them, but human qualities that allow us and other people to flourish in society. So it's about individuals flourishing. So what are the qualities we need, whether they be moral qualities, civic qualities, intellectual qualities, and what may be called kind of performance qualities, things like resilience, grit, determination, teamwork, these sorts of things. Those are kind of different types of qualities. How do they help us as individuals to have kind of to flourish, but also more broadly, society as well. And it's the balance between those two. So character education is those dispositions and traits that kind of inform our motivation and kind of guide the conduct. And then character education is any implicit or explicit educational strategies that are designed to really cultivate or hone or develop those qualities in anyone. I mean, character education, it's a lifelong business. We're in a way we're all shaping and honing our kind of different character qualities, and in particular, what we focus on is something, and I'll probably come back to this later, but something called practical wisdom. It's actually the applied character. It's actually how we show our wisdom in kind of applied situations in society. So education, that's true. People, doctors, nurses, teachers, they're constantly having to make wise decisions that are based on kind of character-based qualities that they may or may not possess. But a lot of our work is obviously at the kind of school site.
So it seems like character is something that's a mix of different qualities within you.
Yeah.
So how do you teach that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I mean, clearly, what you can't do is stick a load of children in a classroom and say, here, we're going to have a lesson on honesty today. And then 40 minutes later, they all beautifully walk out as honest or courageous or compassionate young people. You can't teach character like that. I think we say in kind of broadly that character is caught, taught, and sought. So it's caught in the fact that actually a lot of who we are is the environments and the places that we grow up in. So initially that will be parenting and families, shape a lot of our values and the qualities we possess. More latterly, that will go on to schools, their environment, their ethos, how they're prioritizing different sorts of things. That will be through almost a form of osmosis, through the assemblies, through the different communications, through the behavior policies, etc. That will shape the character. And then, and more lastly, peers and other in employment and other situations. That's all about character caught. We do think that there is a place for character taught, as I said, not in a kind of a didactic or kind of lesson way, although we have actually developed curriculums of character. But what we're talking about here is actually making character education more explicit within kind of maybe a cross curricular. What this does is it allows young people to see that this stuff is important. If teachers and parents are talking about character in an explicit way, they will understand this is important and say as important probably for employers and others as attainment skills and all the other things that schools are expected to do. But also it gives them a language and tools to be able to start to discuss these things, the dilemmas, the situations in their life that call on them to show particular character qualities. So around this discussion might be, in their interactions online, if they've got an understanding of why character is important and why it matters, they can think through that through all the different dilemmas and challenges and other things that they actually face in online situations. So that's kind of taught, and we've got lots of programs you can do that through literacy, through stories, through narratives, through dilemmas, through mentoring, through coaching. There's lots of strategies for that. But ultimately, what we say is characters should be sought. And that means we're not taking a behavioristic approach to character education. It's not like carrots and sticks. It's not like rewarding kids for doing the right thing. It's not like putting very strict and enforced rules in place for making them to do the right thing. What we want to do is them to actually seek out opportunities to show or demonstrate the sorts of qualities we'd hope they would. That means allowing for mistakes. We all make mistakes, whether it's our kids making mistakes by miscommunicating, for example, on a social networking website, or maybe kind of misbehaving somewhere in schools. We all make mistakes, but it's actually characters about how you learn from them, how you actually reflect and think on your action and support it to maybe to develop, as I say, a wisdom that would help you to think about doing things differently next time.
So that what you've just said is beautifully linked to a question that was posed prior to the webinar, which was, what subject is character education taught in? So you're saying it should be almost across the school?
Yeah, I mean, I've developed, along with our government here, actually, a suite of learning materials that you can teach in 14 different secondary school subjects. I've shown how you can use great stories from history to not only teach about the curriculum of history, but actually teach about the kind of character that different people throughout history had to show when faced with kind of real life situations. And the best thing about, for example, history, and this is true of a lot of stories in English as well, is that what you're looking for is the grey areas in these stories. They're not the black and white. They're actually where some of the great kind of role models of the people from our past have actually had to demonstrate whether it be on honesty or compassion or resilience or whatever in challenging situations. But there's obviously much more obvious subjects like citizenship education, PSHE, PE, physical education. These are all vehicles that commonly character education is actually going on within those subjects, whether it's done explicitly or implicitly. And I think we can show, whether it be maths, English, across all the secondary school subjects, that you can do it. I think there's also a place for some we've got a school here at the University of Birmingham which actually teaches discrete character education lessons every week, which actually happens to encompass a lot of the PSHE, citizenship education, and other subjects within there. So a lot of these whole source subjects are actually encompassed into that. What that tends to do is not start with the issues that are looked at within citizenship or PSHE, but look at the types of character qualities that young people need to show to deal with those different issues, and then explore the issues through them.
Okay. So how does this course is around, there's two links to character education, one around social media and one around health and well-being. So I'll go with the health and well-being because that's still quite broad. So how does character education link to health and well-being?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing to say is that character education has a lot of crossover with other kind of disciplines like positive psychology, positive education, and those sorts of areas. And because a lot of people like Marcy Seligman and other people's work have really looked at the development of human strengths that would support kind of personal well-being. So rather than taking a deficit model for personal well-being, trying to take a strengths-based approach to developing those. And in our master's program, we do touch on quite a lot of those sorts of strategies that link to personal well-being and health. I think we need to take a very kind of positive view. It's not a detrimental view. It's not people who lack particular character qualities are going to necessarily have a kind of poor well-being or mental health or all these other issues. It's more about taking a strengths-based approach and thinking that if you can sharpen up or strengthen things such as resilience, but also, I mean, there's a lot of research to show like a lot of the moral character qualities, for example, things like showing gratitude is actually can be very good for personal well-being. Going out and volunteering, showing civic virtue, civic character qualities can actually, giving back and kind of gaining from those sorts of experiences as well. So there's quite a lot of research around the individual character qualities that can actually show how they link to personal well-being. But what we would say on this is that in our approach to character education is we take, and coming back to that individual and societal, we want people to kind of, well, we're hoping to support qualities in individuals that not only allow them to kind of look at themselves to some extent and reflect and think about their own personal well-being, but also think about that more broadly across society, because individuals tend to flourish where the societal well-being is much better as well.
Okay, brilliant. So then how does that link to social media or technology more broadly, character education?
Yeah, I mean, my work has touched, well, more than touched. I undertook my PhD and I've done quite a lot of research since then, looking at the influence of the internet more broadly, but social media comes within that bracket heavily, because obviously that's where most or a lot of young people kind of interact. That's what they use the internet for. I've got to, I go in school, so I know that's obviously what takes up a lot of our children's time. And I mean, the things I'm looking at is, I mean, there's so many different angles I can go into this. I mean, I think, but the first thing I want to say is that I tend to not try and do any research much around screen time and those sorts of things. I tend to think that, it's unless we're really getting into detail of what young people are actually doing online, the conversations around screen time aren't particularly helpful, because my daughter will use the screen for maybe 2 hours to do her homework and we'd think that's absolutely fantastic. But if we think, someone's playing a game on screen time for 2 hours and we think that's awful. So, we've actually got to be kind of much more nuanced around that, and all the research or in fact kind of lack of really good research in this sort of area makes it very problematic for us to make some very strong calls on what we should and shouldn't be telling children to do around that. So what I'm really interested in is going back to moral theory, and I'll try and do this as simple as I possibly can. But in effect, there's 3 broad kind of theories for why we should try to do the right thing online. And I take kind of a very non-deterministic account of social media and technology more broadly. I don't think because the technology exists, it's necessarily going to bring good or bad things to happen. I feel that it's a fairly neutral technology. I think we can use this technology for fantastic things, but it can also be detrimental if we're not using it in the right way. I think, going back to moral theory, I think how we help our young people to use it for good ways is actually we need to look at kind of the moral theory of virtue ethics. So whereas the deontological moral theory, which is kind of Kant's moral theory, is that we manage things through rules and guidance, and obviously clearly we need those for a lot of society. We need rules to help us drive on the right side of the road. Unfortunately, it's very difficult to get young people to do the right thing through rules online. There's so many bypasses, there's so many opportunities, affordances the technology allows that stops that happening. We know that because governments and others have tried to regulate some different social media, and it's difficult for that to actually happen. And then the other kind of big moral theory is utilitarianism, consequentialism, which is about trying to get or make calculations about what's the right thing to do, to weigh up what's the right thing to do. But that relies on people being able to understand the consequences of their action. And my research and others have shown that young people online don't always know what exactly is going to happen when they take a photo and share it with one of their friends, or write an email and think it's only going to go to one person, and it's spread with lots of people. It's very difficult, particularly with the changing time-space dimensions and everything else that social media and internet afford, for them to be able to look at those actions. So if rules are going to only partially be able to help young people, kind of make better decisions online, and if consequences are very hard to predict, so they're not sure, then this is why we need to go back to the third moral theory, which is virtue ethics, which is character. And at the heart of character is what I'm calling online, I call in all my work cyber wisdom. And I think that's the strength that we need to get to. We need to get young people to be, through education, through support, getting it wrong and learning to kind of make better decisions, to actually make wiser decisions online, to actually see the technology as something that they can really enhance themselves and other people if they use it in a kind of a much more wise way. So I think the cultivation of character qualities that are essential for successful communication online and social media, the sorts of character qualities that allow young people to almost self-police themselves, to most crucially maybe know when to pause. Quite often it's rare that children often respond instantaneously, and if they can learn how to kind of pause, to think through things, to think through what is the kind of the honest or the courageous or the more compassionate thing to do in this sort of situation, then they're more likely, I think, not only for themselves to kind of thrive online, but probably the environments, the social networks that they're working in to do so the same.
So just I think that's great, the way to address it. But one of the things that teachers are struggling with is that there's a big gap between teachers' understanding of social media and young people's understanding of social media. So what they can do and experience online. And I wonder if you've come across any of that in your work around character education and how we could help teachers to adopt this kind of approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think firstly, and I include myself in here, that I mean, there's the old digital natives kind of conversation that's always been going along, that kind of young people are different from adults and they're all born digital, and they just grew up with this stuff and they know what they're doing. I mean, I think that can be challenged on a whole load of different levels. That obviously no two young people use social media the same. Half the world is not actually on the internet or using social media, although we think that everyone is using this technology, and I've got two different children, and they use the internet, social media in very different ways. So I think the digital native stuff oversimplifies things. I think where it is helpful, though, in some ways, it's to allow us to think about what our responsibility might be as digital immigrants, which is the kind of the flip side of that. Young people, people of perhaps my age, and who are having or had to kind of in a way immigrate into this world. And I think there's two ways that you can immigrate into kind of a new world. So you can either be forced into it, or you can actually undertake a process of voluntary immigration. And I think through voluntary immigration, what you're actually trying to do is learn the norms from the people who actually kind of live or maybe the natives of the country. It does take us to show a number of different character qualities ourselves. It requires us to show courage, to try and open-mindedness, understanding, these sorts of character, curiosity, these qualities, to try and learn from young people themselves about their experiences online and where they're actually, experiencing challenges, but also where they're also seeing these social networks as really benefiting and bringing great things to their life that they no doubt to are. So I think the first thing that we need to be doing is actually to be much better kind of digital immigrants in many ways. We, as teachers and as parents, etc., we need to see this as an opportunity to learn from and alongside children and young people, as opposed to necessarily taking quite a blanket and, in my experience, sometimes very negative approach to young people's use of the internet. And social media. There's no doubt that social media has caused issues. A lot of them actually replicate a lot of what we see in society anyway. Cyberbullying is an extension of bullying. Bullying's gone on in schools in many ways. They replicate, and there is some evidence that they maybe enhance or some of those issues. But in a way, it's an extension of what's gone on previously. And I think we're going to do better that rather than try and have a very negative place on all of technology and just hope it goes away, or think that we know that we can't shut it all off, but maybe think that that's what's actually going to happen, or in dangerously rely on governments to think that they'll do all this regulation for us. I think the best form we can do is actually try to learn and work alongside young people in a form of kind of shared education, I think, around what are the ways that we can both use this technology much more wisely and for the common good.
Okay, so I'm going to go to some questions that people have posed while you've been talking. One goes back to homework.
Yeah.
Your comment about homework. So, can one way to promote character education, would it be setting something to do with social media as homework?
Yeah. I mean, I think, that's a great idea. Thank you, whoever shared that idea. I'm gonna steal it. I'm gonna use it. I think that's a really nice idea. I mean, I'll tell you what I think. I think that we spend a lot of time, particularly in computer science, as I've studied this, I've done quite a lot of research within schools, and we spend so much time on the mechanics of social media, or the mechanics of technology. We spend a lot of time and we put money into kind of teaching all kids coding, whether we're doing that successfully or not. I think what we need to be doing is also learning how to use this technology kind of wisely, as I say. So it's character and coding. I think we need to go alongside. So if that could be put into some sort of form of homework, where we get kind of children and adults teaching each other's kind of skills, qualities around those sorts of areas, I think that'd be really nice homework. I mean, one of the things I'm writing a book on this right now. One of the things I'm suggesting is some sort of kind of family citizenship project, because everyone within a family would probably be able to bring different qualities to it, some and I think that would be a nice way, and you can use the internet to really enhance and accelerate so many other good things that actually go on in society, but actually broaden that reach and scope and opportunity. So an e-citizenship project would bring maybe the skills of young people to make websites or use social media to kind of send campaigns, but kind of parents can be involved through other bringing their knowledge and experience of the different aspects within the campaign, etc. So it's a really nice idea.
So that then links to another question: is that can parents teach character education?
Yeah. But I mean, you see, broadly, I mean, I'm a parent, and I would see that as my number one responsibility. Really, is actually to ensure that my kids have got qualities that allow them to live happy, healthy, flourishing kind of lives. Well, living with well-being, and all of those things for me require them to have a certain sorts of character qualities. So, say, can I teach character education? I'm certainly not doing it in a, you'll be pleased to know, not making my kids come home every day and sit down and say, right, here's how kids were having some character education. I'm doing it day in, day out.
Yeah.
The most important instrument, tool, resource that we have for character education is our own character. It's who we are. How I exemplify the different sorts of things around home that I'd like my kids to pick up. So I wouldn't call myself character education, but in effect, that is what I am actually doing day in, day out at home.
Okay, so linking, I'm going to throw a question in there, linking, because I know who's on the course. So on this course that we have at the moment, we have teachers, most physical education teachers, or personal social and health education teachers, or citizenship teachers. But we also have people who are do training workshops to external organizations in the areas of health, well-being, and technology. We also have clinicians. We have people from like PRU units, people that work in the community sector, so the volunteering in like youth clubs and that kind of aspects. So character education, I think, tends to be typically in schools. So how can the community and all these other people that are really important for young people's lives promote character education? Is it the same as the parent approach, that we're just naturally promoting character?
Yeah, no, I think actually a lot of, I mean, you've listed off a whole load of different people within there. I mean, I've done research. A publication came out last year called Habits of Service, that showed how much work big and small voluntary sector providers did around character education. For example, children get involved in kind of citizenship service type activities before the age of 10 are actually 2 or 3 times more likely to develop about 2.5 times more likely to develop to quality of service by the time they get to 18. There's clear, whether it be kind of these national providers, National Citizen Service, Scouts, Guides, voluntary sector, Duke of Edinburgh, or much more local voluntary opportunities, that they are very much around character building. What we often talk about them is their double benefit. Those sorts of experiences often have a benefit for the community through the actions that young people take part, but they clearly have a benefit for the individual in terms of their own character development. So the voluntary sector, whether more explicit or implicit or large or small size organizations, does a great deal around there. And then we've also done work with people like young people who may be living more at the margins in pupil referral units, etc. If you look on the Jubilee Centre website, you'll see reports and resources that we've developed alongside teachers and other educationalists working within those spaces. What I find is that quite a lot of young people have ended up in places like pupil referral units because they haven't fitted a maybe kind of slightly heavy-handed system within schools that really focus on testing, exams, and those sorts of areas. And if you start to have conversations with young people about their character qualities, which they've probably got some great character qualities, but they may not all be always being applied in the right sorts of ways, then we found that they tend to be a much better place to really engage young people within, and we would still see those characters as a fundamental part of education. I mean, I don't see character education as another thing on teachers' plate. I very much see it, and you can see I've got a little frank saying here, but I very much see it as the plate itself. I mean, I think in a way, all the things that we were asking schools, those in pupil referral units, etc., to do, develop young people who are ready for employment, who have developed different sorts of attainment, who have got behaviour quality, good behaviour. They all depend on having young people who've got the sorts of qualities that of being able to work well with other people, to be able to kind of be resilient, to be courageous, to have curiosity. These are all qualities. That's, if we start with those, we're more likely to get the other outcomes that we look for. And it's for one reason why Ofsted have actually put character education into their new framework from this year. You can't get good and outstanding as a school unless you're showing how you're undertaking character education within your school from this year.
Okay, so this is the final question, and I've left this one because it might be a little bit harder to answer.
Okay, I'm ready for it. Bring it on.
So my perspective on young people is always grounded in their voices. So you've seen some of the videos, some of the stuff that we've done, some of young people's perspectives. So I'm going to ask you how you might address the story of Jess, who's in our course. So Jess, she sees lots of stuff on social media. She's bombarded with stuff on Instagram. And there's lots of stuff that's fake news and there's lots of stuff that's true. Now, she can tell what's fake news and she can tell what's true. Because there's so much there and because the messages seem to overlap between her role models and what is considered fake news and what is also considered fake celebrities. So I'm talking about the Kylie Jenners of the world, that sort of thing. How can character education help her to understand how to navigate this space? So she's already critical, she already knows what's fake news, but she experiences this pressure of lots and lots of different information. So how can character education help Jess?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, I like the fact that you use the word navigate. I found actually that the word cyber, which I use in most cyber wisdom, actually in the old Greek term means to navigate or to steer. It's actually to be a helmsman. Sorry, it means to steer or be a helmsman. And I say that what would probably our role as educators, as adults, need to be doing is helping our children steer or navigate more wisely through their internet world. It's not to steer the boat for them. It's to actually be a source of advice. Now, so one of the models I've been developing is something that goes from kind of rules through to kind of character. So it's developed as a React model, but one of the A within that model is kind of about being an advisor, being a consultant, being a coach, and supporting young people and listening to their stories and supporting that in that way. I haven't got a straight answer to how character education can particularly deal with fake news, which is the example, and kind of all these Russia stories. But I think what it can do is probably cognitively, if we get young. So one of the exercises I do a lot with schools is get young people to think through different sorts of dilemmas that they face in life that come to them online, and fake news is often one that come up, like the sort of thing you say. Yeah. And what I'm hoping to do through them, and I've just had a paper published on this, is show that you can almost cognitively prime young people to by using these sorts of dilemmas in kind of educational discussion to think through what them and other people around them might do when faced with those sorts of situations, and come up to some kind of solutions about the sorts of character qualities and the wisdom that they might want to show when facing examples. What we find is that a lot of young people spend their life, although they're constantly communicating online, they're never thinking through cognitively what they ought to do with other people in those sorts of situations. They're often reacting and responding entirely on their own. If you can almost take that offline into sorts of group discussions, use ethical-based dilemmas such as fake news as the source to having those discussions, then you get young people to kind of think through and share with other people cognitively about what they might do when they're face back online with that situation and maybe respond slightly differently in that time. That's not a fully kind of evidenced way through, but it's certainly the sort of research that I'm looking into right now, how you can pre-prepare, I suppose, young people for the instantaneous nature of social media in kind of offline settings that give them more strength of kind of conviction, in particular when faced with different sorts of challenges. And I would say fake news really is a dilemma, because in a way what you're having to do is think through ethically what you do and don't believe in those sorts of situations.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. I think that's so, like, I don't try to pry on young people's actual social media accounts much myself, but when I've seen it, it's that pace of movement, pace of information, pace of comments. You know, one post can get 100 comments within, I don't know, 5 minutes, and it's of people at school. So it's the sheer pace of things, and it's stop, pause, what's ethical, and using those scenarios. So the final question is that I think people are going to have more questions, and I think people are going to want to read more about your things and look at more of the different things. So you suggested the Jubilee Centre. Where can people go to find out more about what you've talked about today?
Yeah, I mean, certainly go to the Jubilee Centre website, which is www.jubileecentre.ac.uk. On that, there's loads of different resources. They're all free to download. Resources for teachers, some resources for parents, resources for you know, voluntary sector, etc. So you can get hold of them free. We're just launching a new project on character and cyber wisdom in the next year or so. So anyone who wants to get involved with that, would be looking to work with family, schools and parents on that, please do email me. You can find my name online, Tom Harrison at University of Birmingham. Please do email me if there's any way you want to get involved. And then a quick plug for a book that I haven't finished, but there we are. It's a book called Thrive, Cultivating Cyber Wisdom and Character Online, or for Online Flourishing. And that will be out next year in all good bookshops.
Brilliant, sounds good. And available online, because that's the
sorry, most definitely a e-version of that, yes.
Brilliant. Well, thank you ever so much, Tom. I'm sure everybody's really enjoyed this today. And thank you for giving us your insights into character education.
You're very welcome. Thank you very much, Vicky.